Tesla. Once a symbol of innovation and Elon Musk's ambition, today it is a ruined empire. Once, the company's shares were considered the gold standard for investors, and Tesla cars were synonymous with progress and the future. But what happened? Why has this once successful company become the subject of ridicule and protests today?
Running around on stage with a Tesla stock price, where the stock price had gone in half. And he was overjoyed. What an evil thing to do. What a creep, what a jerk. Like, who derives joy?
Imagine this: Tesla shares are falling by tens of percent, dealerships are being vandalized, and global protests are sweeping the world. Musk, who seemed invincible, now looks like a man on the brink of disaster. And what about his empire? Is it destroyed forever, or is this just a temporary setback?
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
How did Tesla, once the confident leader in the electric vehicle market, start losing key markets and the loyalty of its most loyal customers? In China, Tesla is losing half of its sales, its cars are becoming increasingly unpopular, and Chinese manufacturers are gaining momentum. The situation is no better in Europe and the US, where the automaker is facing increased competition and falling demand for its models. Is this the end for a company that was supposed to change the world?
Teslas are being torched across the country. Dealerships shot up and set on fire. Spray paint to vandalize and make a statement. People in Southern California are getting notes on their Teslas, calling them complicit Nazis for owning electric cars.
But what's worse is the reaction of the customers themselves. Loyal customers who believed in Musk and his company are now turning Tesla showrooms into protest zones. And the Cybertruck, which was supposed to revolutionize the world of transportation, has become the subject of ridicule on social media. What happened to Tesla, and why is a brand that was recently at the peak of its popularity now causing so much hatred?
I mean, the things that he's doing is not trying to make America better. He's ruining our infrastructure, every department in our government. He's ruining, and he's right now destroying our economy. He's taken away all of our allies. We're a pariah in the world.
Environmental organizations, right-wing politicians, and even Tesla employees themselves have all begun to withdraw their support for the company. Musk, who was once a hero to many, has become a political pariah. Insiders are leaving the company, shares are falling, and Tesla's reputation is crumbling before our eyes. Next up is Wall Street. Panic grips major financial institutions, and hedge funds start selling off shares. Even the biggest investors are losing faith in Tesla's future. The company loses half of its market capitalization, and against this backdrop, Elon Musk is increasingly losing control of the situation.
Well, you will hear people over in Europe say the new Model Y, the Juniper, could be a difference maker, but that's been in that market now for more than a month. And you would think that you'd see a greater snapback if it's going to be a difference maker. Look, we could be wrong. It could be a difference maker once you get the sales for April, May, and June. But when you have a country like Norway, I think the sales were down something like 11% there. I mean, that's a very savvy EV consumer in Norway. And that's long been a strength for Tesla. Very small market, not huge volume, but I think almost all of the vehicles they sell there are electric. And they embraced Tesla long before others. And, you know, the reports there are not encouraging.
How do governments react? How does the global economy change when Tesla loses its position in key markets? The situation in China becomes critical, and instead of supporting the American giant, the Chinese government begins to undermine its position.
outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. There are a lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK, where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
Friends, you won't believe what happened to a brand that was synonymous with the future just yesterday. And most importantly, what will happen next? Tesla's fall could be the first bell for the entire global economy, and we are living on the brink of this revolution. Join us to find out how it all happened and what lies ahead for Musk and his company in the near future. Tesla was once a symbol of progress and innovation, a pioneer in the world of electric vehicles that promised to change the future of transportation. However, that world has collapsed at a staggering speed. In the last few months, the company has experienced a catastrophic decline that has devastated its stock and reputation. No one expected Tesla to face such problems, as it was a company whose technology amazed the world, and Elon Musk himself seemed invincible. But what went wrong?
371. Most were saying 350 to 360. Now they're coming in at 336,068. Production of 362, 615. So for some point of reference here, you're going back to Q2, maybe Q1 of 2022 in terms of the last time that they had production this or deliveries this low for one quarter. So again, Tesla deliveries worse than expected at just over 336,000 deliveries in the first quarter. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
That's horrible. Can I just ask Phil, how about the Cybertruck? How's that doing? You got a little inventory there in the Cybertruck?
Let's start with the fact that Tesla's shares lost almost 70% of their value in a short period of time, which came as a real shock to investors and analysts. At the height of the crisis, their value continued to fall, despite Musk's assurances that the company was recovering. Surprisingly, even the most experienced hedge funds began to panic and sell off their shares en masse. Tesla's decline soon became the main topic of discussion on Wall Street, where analysts wondered how a company that was once considered a must-have for every portfolio could survive such a financial collapse. But that was only the beginning.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
The situation with Tesla dealerships was even more alarming. Protests that began with unprecedented demonstrations against Musk's policies escalated into acts of vandalism. Dealerships across the country were attacked by disgruntled customers, and Tesla car shows became the epicenter of mass riots. The protesters did not limit themselves to words. They burned Cybertrucks, painted cars, and destroyed everything associated with the brand. This created even more discontent, and even the most loyal customers began to wonder whether they should continue to support the company. At that point, it felt like Tesla had lost control not only of the market, but also of its own image.
Does that help Tesla? I mean, you had Tim Waltz, who's a huge jerk,
One of the main reasons for these events was that Tesla was losing ground in key markets. In China, which was one of the main markets for Tesla electric vehicles, the company faced dramatic losses. Sales fell by 50%, and Tesla lost its leadership in this market. The Chinese authorities began to actively redirect subsidies to local electric vehicle manufacturers such as BYD and NIO, which made Tesla's products significantly less competitive. The brand, once a symbol of technological progress, found itself at the center of fierce competition, where its competitive advantages no longer played such a role.
Over the last couple of months. But the other thing that this could potentially be is an attempt at readjustment or correction by the Trump administration, in that one of Trump's closest kind of allies and supporters, and someone who's clearly very influential in the administration, is coming out to kind of push back against the recently implemented policies. So I'm thinking, or maybe hopeful is the right word, that this might be a signal that the administration is considering walking back some of those policies.
The situation in Europe was no better. Environmental organizations began to accuse Tesla of not caring enough about the environment, and right-wing politicians began to perceive Musk as a threat to national interests. All these factors led to Tesla beginning to lose its position in the European market. In addition, competitors were not sitting idly by. Companies such as Volkswagen and BMW began to actively develop their own electric vehicles, which not only met consumer expectations but also offered much more competitive prices. The reduction in prices for Tesla electric vehicles, which was a necessary step, failed to halt the decline in sales. European consumers began to choose other brands, and Tesla increasingly became the subject of ridicule.
We've accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
He praised all the domestic actions he has taken so far on immigration.
And I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country.
And spending cuts.
We are draining the swamp. It's very simple.
In the U.S., where Tesla once enjoyed huge demand, the situation was also deteriorating. Protests against Musk, his political views, and his decisions regarding the company's operations became increasingly widespread. Loyal customers who once believed in his ideas began to abandon their plans to purchase cars. The Cybertruck, which was supposed to be a real revolution in the world of transportation, became the subject of ridicule on social media. Its uncompetitive features, as well as criticism from environmentalists and right-wing politicians, meant that Tesla products were becoming increasingly rare on US roads. What's more, dealers started cutting prices in an attempt to keep demand up, but without much success.
Tesla shares have slumped by more than 9% amid a fall in sales in Europe. The electric vehicle maker posted lower sales across 5 European countries, including France and the UK. Joining us now to discuss this is CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio. Remy, why do we believe these sales are dropping? What's driving that?
Sure. Well, Errol, basically what Elon Musk has been talking about over the past, say, few months, ever since Donald Trump's election back to the White House, that has been fueling this anger, this frustration, some even say disgust towards Musk, and they're taking it out on Tesla. Tesla now feeling the pain. But because of what's happening here in Europe, Tesla sales fell by nearly half across the continent just last month, 45%.
Particularly noteworthy is the fact that Tesla's Cybertruck, which was originally supposed to revolutionize the automotive industry, has now become the subject of ridicule and criticism. Memes and videos mocking its features and appearance began to appear on social media. Against the backdrop of the crisis, many users wondered how a company that had been a leader for so long could release such a failed product. It soon became clear that the Cybertruck, despite Musk's promises, had failed to live up to expectations, and instead of becoming a symbol of the future, it became a topic of jokes and concern among consumers. All this led to a decline in Tesla's electric car sales, and even the company's most loyal supporters began to doubt its future.
Canada, the largest supplier of steel to the U.S., slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods that are sold in Canada. And the 27 countries of the European Union imposing retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods sold in Europe, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Kentucky bourbon. President Trump with the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House today. The president suggesting his tariffs won't stop here, saying, "Of course, I'm going to respond." And tonight, right here, the new poll showing 56% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. The number's even worse now on the president's tariffs.
The toxicity of the Tesla brand became one of the main topics of discussion among experts and in the media. Musk, who had always been in the spotlight, now became the embodiment of all the company's problems. His actions, loud statements, and controversial decisions led to the brand losing support not only among consumers but also among environmentalists and right-wing politicians. Protests against Tesla took on a political tone, and the company found itself at the center of a global struggle between various social movements. Musk, who was once a symbol of freedom and progress, was now perceived as a man out of touch with reality, and his actions did not resonate with the public.
Hey Diane, this investigation really just beginning, and one of the key elements will of course be the surveillance video, and investigators potentially have a lot of it to work with as they try to figure out what caused this fire. We know that surveillance footage has been turned over, including video from each of the cars, which could prove vital to understanding what happened here, because each vehicle has its own camera system that works even when the car is off, and 16 cars burned in this fire, and right now investigators don't know what caused it.
Tesla insiders also began to leave the company. This was the first warning sign for everyone who was following its activities. First and foremost, the departure of Elon Musk and the chief financial officer was a real blow to the company's image. These departures were not accidental and were further evidence that panic had set in at Tesla. Insiders were leaving the company, which had serious consequences for Tesla's financial stability. The share price continued to fall, and the company's reputation continued to crumble. A global campaign against Tesla was gaining momentum. Tesla owners, who were once proud of their loyalty to the brand, began selling their cars en masse. Stories began to appear on social media about how people regretted their purchase and decided to get rid of their electric cars. Influencers and bloggers began to actively speak out against the company, which only intensified the panic among consumers. Some even began distributing videos of protests against Tesla, which led to an even more negative perception of the brand. Musk, who had always been in the spotlight, now became a political pariah. His alliance with Trump, which initially seemed like a strategically sound decision, has now become a stumbling block for his future career. Progressive forces in the US and Europe began to distance themselves from Musk, and his political connections only added fuel to the fire.
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods.
When companies begin to lose their market position, the consequences are often inevitable and catastrophic. However, what happened to Tesla was so massive that even the most experienced analysts were left confused. In 2025, as Tesla's car sales continued to fall, the situation went beyond a normal economic crisis and turned into a real financial and political cataclysm. Elon Musk, once the embodiment of innovation and progress, now found himself at the center of a storm, where his every move sparked new protests and waves of discontent.
KTLA's Samantha Cortese joins us live with more on the wave of vandalism in protest of Elon Musk and his role in Washington. Sam?
Hi, Sharon, Micah. The ATF and FBI are collaborating with federal, state, and local law enforcement to investigate acts of domestic terrorism surrounding Teslas.
China, which had always been a key market for Tesla, became the scene of serious losses. In recent months, Tesla's sales in China fell by 37%, and the Shanghai plant was operating at less than 60% of its capacity. The reason lies in a number of factors, including growing nationalist sentiment among Chinese consumers. While Tesla was a symbol of progress and technological innovation, Chinese consumers began to increasingly support local manufacturers such as BYD and NIO, which introduced more competitive models tailored to the needs of the Chinese market. The Chinese government also played its part by revising subsidies for electric vehicles and redirecting them to local companies. Musk tried to find a solution, but his efforts were in vain. All this was accompanied by a deterioration in relations between the Chinese authorities and Tesla, which began to question the company's data collection and car safety practices.
But they are not ruling out the possibility that this was arson. At the same time, as you just mentioned, there are groups that have been organizing ongoing and peaceful protests at Tesla dealerships around the world. These demonstrations targeting Elon Musk and his affiliation with the Trump administration. Also, Italy's prime minister is said to be close friends with Musk, and there were reports that Teslas have been vandalized in her hometown in Italy. Diane.
Parallel to the decline of Tesla and Musk's reputation in the domestic market, the situation in Europe also deteriorated. European countries that once supported the development of electric vehicles and actively introduced subsidies for Tesla have now begun to reconsider their policies. In some countries, such as Germany and France, the government began to support local manufacturers, and Tesla became less and less in demand. Competitors such as Volkswagen and BMW began to introduce their own electric vehicles, which not only met environmental standards, but also consumer preferences, posing a real threat to Tesla. Problems with the price, quality, and performance of Tesla cars became apparent and could not be ignored.
Worse than expected, 336 and 68 vehicles, 336,068 vehicles delivered in the first quarter for Tesla. For a point of reference, the street was expecting, the street account was expecting, based on analyst expectations.
Tesla's global collapse triggered a massive sell-off of shares, and the company's crisis was no longer a local phenomenon. It affected not only the electric vehicle market, but the entire economy as a whole. Investors began to actively withdraw their money, fearing further losses, and confidence in the brand continued to decline. Musk, once one of the most influential figures in the tech world, has now become a figure surrounded by scandal and criticism. His attempts to interfere in political processes, make statements that are not always true, and fight competition have led to a company that seemed unstoppable now finding itself at the center of a crisis. Tesla was forced to restructure and cut costs. Work on expanding and building new gigafactories was suspended, and plans to improve products began to seem increasingly distant and unachievable. Amid this uncertainty, Elon Musk, who had previously seemed invincible, had found himself in a position where he had to look for new ways to save a company that may have already lost its former glory.